Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 187. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Neil Donald Walsh.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Video Blocks. Now, guys, when I was shooting my show for Legendary Pictures, and I did that 96 pages in 4 days, I actually got into post and we used a lot of stock footage, stock sounds, and even some graphics from Video Blocks. They are an amazing resource. With your membership, you are granted the rights to use that footage forever, in perpetuity, on any projects you want to. So if you want to try a 7-day free trial, and by the way, anything you download during those 7 days is yours to keep. And if you decide to stay, you get 84% off the yearly membership. It is well worth it, guys. Trust me, if you do a lot of production, it is something you really need. So just head over to videoblocks.com/hustle. And today's show is also sponsored by Masterclass and Martin Scorsese's Masterclass, if you can believe it. Marty is teaching you how to direct films in his amazing new masterclass. I signed up instantly and I cannot wait for it to come out. To pre-enroll to get early access, just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/Scorsese. That's indiefilmhustle.com/SCORSESE. Now, today on the show, we have filmmaker Chris Sobchak. Now, Chris is a filmmaker who created a streaming Amazon series called Please Tell Me I'm Adopted. It's a comedy series, and it took him almost 2 years to put together. It was done on a very low budget, and they did the entire post-production process by themselves because they just had no money to do the CGI, the sound design, the VFX, color, editing, just everything. And by the way, he also was doing this while working as a drum and percussion technician for Elton John, who he's been working with for years. So a lot of the stuff that he was doing as far as finishing his series, he was doing on the road. So I wanted to get Chris on the show to kind of talk about his techniques, his tricks, how he put this all together, and what his experience was like working with Amazon and putting it all up on their platform, and how he's marketing it, how he's getting it out there, how much attention he's getting for his series, everything, guys. So without any further ado, here is my interview with Chris Sobchak. I'd like to welcome to the show Chris Sobchak, man. Thank you so much for being on the show, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. It's actually a real honor and privilege. I love your product, man. It's great to actually communicate with other filmmakers and people that are searching for the right answers, and actually trying to push the envelope with gear and push the envelope with what's possible and indie filmmakers. It's really cool.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man. So first and foremost, why in God's green earth did you get into this business? And how did you get into this business?
Well, that's actually a very long and convoluted story.
The short version.
When I was growing up, both of my parents, as it turned out, were college professors, PhD college professors. And strangely, the area of expertise that they ended up landing in, at least initially, and my mother has gone and done a variety of other things as well, but was in the critical study side of filmmaking. Oh. And so my father taught at the University of Utah, still teaches there. He's retired out of the English department, but nonetheless taught critical studies film courses. My mother did the same thing, both in Utah at different moments, across the U.S. as she was getting her own degrees, Santa Cruz, and eventually ended up as the associate dean of the film and television at UCLA under Gil Cates, who did the Oscars for many, many years. So I sort of came out of that growing up in movie theaters. First breast I ever saw was in Fellini's Amarcord. Things that scared me when I was growing up were things like Psycho and Not Freddy. And the most terrifying thing I ever saw was at way too young an age was David Lynch's Eraserhead.
Oh, Jesus.
And I still actually have nightmares about that film. But nonetheless, I sort of try to, you either do what your parents do or you go run screaming the other direction. And I ended up in the music industry as a drummer and now at this point a drum technician, which basically means I take care of other musicians' equipment on the road or in the studio. And my current employee, wonderfully, is working as the drum and percussion technician with the Elton John band.
Who's this Elton John you speak of?
He's this English piano player. Look him up. It might be. And terrifyingly, I've actually been doing that on and off. I'm in the midst of my 17th year working with Elton.
Oh, wow.
Touring the globe, working in the studios, and he averages almost 100 shows a year, if not more, between solo piano. He loves to play. He's an amazing boss. I couldn't be happier or luckier. And so as I was trying not to end up in the film business, I met a wonderful lady and made her my wife. Thankfully, the stupid fool said yes. Mm-hmm. Her name's Nicole Sobchak. And she actually obviously is a New York trained actress, stage. She comes out of the Esper School there, and has basically, gone through Second City's Conservatory here. She's just an amazing auteur, writer, director, producer, and most importantly for her, she's an actress first and foremost. So one of the things that we were very lucky here in Los Angeles is we were championed by the late, great Gary Marshall. And Gary, at one different moments, said to my wife, Nikki, said, what you need to do, you need to actually push in, you need to make some content. And one of the things he suggested was get your people together. Everybody wins. You get a DP who wants something for his reel. You get good actors together. You get a good writer together. You put together little vignettes, and you can make your own stuff and actually make sure it looks pro, make sure it looks good. And basically, the only people, to be quite honest, on a project like that don't need anything for their reel are going to be your grips and maybe the person running Crafty. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, it's like those people, you end up paying. But just like being in a student film program, you sort of have a lot of leeway and you get great products. So I started getting pulled in this is a number of years ago, pulled into the producerial side to put all this together, which was not any big deal for me. And over the years, this has ramped up because my wife and I have started our production company called Raptastic Productions. And we basically had a little project that was going on. And my wife, when she was in Second City, and this is our show that's now on Amazon worldwide called Please Tell Me I'm Adopted. Mm-hmm. My wife basically was in her Second City Conservatory final class semester, and she was walking down Hollywood Boulevard. There was a young lady walking the other direction past her wearing a burqa, and two girls walking directly in front of her started trash talking this girl in the burqa that had gone the other way. And they were talking about how this girl in the burqa had set women's rights back 30 years and all this really negative stuff. At which point my wife, sort of being in this comedic mode, said, hey, wait a minute, what if a woman, just comedically, what if she didn't want that? What if she wanted to just have no responsibilities? And so out of that came a sketch that was going to go into her Second City Conservatory class show, as they do. They put a whole show together and they stay together as a troupe. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, they realistically don't necessarily have, some things make the show, some things don't. In this particular case, this sketch, reluctantly, my wife pulled it from the show because she thought there was something more there. Mm-hmm. Sorry about that phone there. She thought there was something more there, something more exciting, something special. And so as a result, after she had graduated conservatory there at Second City, she decided, hey, let's get a group of people together. I just need to purge this wonderful idea. I need to just put something up. Let's just do something quick, down and dirty. Put it on YouTube. It'll be great. Mm-hmm. And so she basically started putting the writing together, and they had spitballed ideas and things like that. And I remember waking up. My wife woke up next to me in bed, sat bolt upright the day after they had sort of flushed it out. Mm-hmm. And she had come up with the concept of the little sketch. And she literally sat bolt upright and said, oh, my God, Chris, wake up, wake up. This isn't just a sketch. This is the basis for a series. And of course, I sat bolt upright and went, "Oh God, what's this going to cost me?"
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And that's how Please Tell Me I'm Adopted started. So, of course, at that point, we're probably like every other producerial, first attempt, if you will, from film school. You're kind of falling all over yourself, making mistakes and trying to fix them as you go. But what was great is because we brought in some really great people, and we crowdfunded almost all of the production funding. We, wrote proper scripts. I put it into Movie Magic, scheduling and budgeting. I got very quickly up to speed doing all of the executive producer and producer jobs for everything from funding to obviously even legitimizing our company, tax ID, bank accounts, every other thing that, you kind of, okay, we got to ramp this up because we're kind of really doing this. At which point it really got very wonderfully real after the first full day of shooting, when people that we trust in the industry were looking at the dailies and we're going, wow, you can't just put this on YouTube. You actually have to do something more with this. This is not only is this great, the concept, but it looks great, it's shot great, the actors are great. You've got something here. You can't just phone the rest of it in. Mm-hmm. And because of that, we really sort of overnight morphed into a very serious production, company that really was taking all of this, whether it be the glass that we were using, which thankfully Kathy, amazing woman at Panavision, who's good friends with our DP on the project, helped us. We shot with Panavision lenses.
That must have been nice.
It was terrifying. I don't think I quite ever understood the power of a good piece of glass. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we had two different DPs or camera ops that were working at the time for us on the project. And one of them was actually almost physically scared to put the, $210,000 zoom on the camera.
Yeah. If you want, you could stop. You could stop and unplug that phone if you could. That'd be great.
Yes. If you don't mind. Hang on 1 second. Sorry, Alex. I'll be there in 2 seconds.
Sure.
Sorry about that. You'll have to throw it into isotope spectral repair.
Yep, not a problem. All right.
Anyway, as I was saying, very quickly we realized, okay, things like the glass you have, the grip package you have, the, actually even just the knowledge base of the cameras, and do you know how to set your fan so that between takes it turns on because it's hot where you are, and but it's the minute you go live, hey, wait a minute, what's that noise? Where are we picking that up from? Mm-hmm. Stupid stuff like that you stumble over and go, oh, okay. And one of the things that was most amazing for me on the journey between, for my wife and I, is what you start realizing, and I don't know if you've experienced this yourself. At the end of the day, you may have these great people who say, I can do that. But if you're the captain of the ship, it's your money, it's your project, it's your production company and your moniker. Mm-hmm. It all does come back down to you. And, you obviously have to put your team together. You also have to be prepared to realize that sometimes people are overstating their abilities. Sometimes people
What? In the film business? No.
Every so often. And they mean well. They don't mean to put you in a situation where your back is against the wall. And at the same time, then you have two choices: fold up your tent and go home, or figure it out. And one of the greatest things I was ever told about producing came from Gary Marshall's co-producer and executive at Henderson Productions, named Heather Hall, who's one of our co-producers on Please Tell Me, and we've got other projects we're working on. I was literally at a gas station in the San Fernando Valley with picking up some grip equipment, and something I can't even remember at this point what had happened. I was literally standing in the 97-degree heat weeping. And I called her, and she calmed me down, and she said, "Look, Chris, it's okay." She said, "Here's how this is going to go." From years of experience on studio movies as well as indies, she said, being a producer is about putting together a really, really great plan and a really, really great team. And then you're going to expect that absolutely nothing will happen to that plan. And in fact, because you did put a good plan together, your job from that point forward is to carry a really big fire extinguisher every day, put out one fire at a time, don't lose your head, and just prioritize what you need to get done now, not necessarily what has to happen for tomorrow just yet. And that has been the greatest advice that I got, because it saw me through days where things were at different moments completely impossible and untenable. Mm-hmm. And yet we managed to push through. We managed to, make our deadlines. We managed to get the footage in the can. And in certain circumstances, especially in the post world, which is turned into quite a beautiful challenge for Nikki and I.
We'll get into the post stuff, but I wanted to ask you how did you keep costs low on such? I'm assuming this was semi shoestring budget.
This is probably more shoestring than you can imagine. Obviously, we, as most indies do, you underestimate what you need, and you because you want the green light, you want to do it, you want to go. And we basically crowdfunded a good portion of the principal photography budget. The rest was filled in literally out of my own pocket, out of Nicole and I. At which point we got to that moment of, great, we've got everything we need. Now we're in post. What do we do? And it really came down to actually saying, you know what, with the vision that my wife has, and obviously being the showrunner of the show, she really has Final Cut. And Final Cut and her eye would have been completely impossible to do any sort of traditional post-production workflow. It really came down, it would have been too many hours, too many changes, too many adjustments to get it right. And so as a result, we did it all ourselves. We physically did all the post ourselves. I learned whatever programs we needed to learn. I consulted with some amazing people in Hollywood. And I will say that's one of the greatest lessons that I learned in this particular project that have now moved me forward, where I'm actually getting paid to do post stuff for people, blessedly, and help with product design and things of that nature. Is real, true Hollywood professionals are, like yourself, are willing to give their knowledge base. They're willing to answer questions. They love to be involved in solutions. Doesn't mean they're going to work for you for free. Doesn't mean that they're going to, give you great glass for nothing or anything. But when you have a really good question that excites them, and you find true visionaries or passionate people within the film industry, they want to know the answer too. So suddenly they're on the ride with you. And we had one of those was a gentleman named Michael Tronick, who's a big-time film editor, Academy Board member. And he was sort of my guru of post-production. And anytime I needed connection or advice, or like, where do we color grading to? What's their standard? What are they doing on House of Cards? So that if my show looks good and House of Cards looks good, that's great, because if somebody's monitor's miscalibrated and they're watching House of Cards and they look bad, I can look bad. I just can't have it the other way around. So those sorts of questions, he always had somebody, if he didn't know himself, that he could send me to, some of whom have become, my greatest proponents and friends. I mean, and some of the companies, as I said, have seen what I've done as an independent filmmaker with their equipment and with their software, and have said, wow, you can't do that. Can you tell us how you did that?
So, first of all, what camera did you shoot the show on?
We actually we shot the actual principal photography for this season was shot on a Red Epic. Okay. We actually now have such a wonderful close relationship with Blackmagic, and I've used a lot of their cameras since. The Red product was really nice, but I actually think I prefer the Blackmagic product overall.
The look's a little bit different.
Yes, it is a little bit different. But we did shoot the first season on Red Epic. As I said, we were lucky enough to have Cinema Primes and Zooms from Panavision, which, I mean, you can't really go wrong with that.
You're good. You're good. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And we did shoot intentionally because as we started, we weren't sure where we were going with this. We did shoot it all in 5K on the Red. So basically, we knew we had what we would need to deliver a 4K UHD output, which is what we did. A lot of the streaming services and distribution networks, you don't necessarily have to, by law, have 4K content, but they actually take you a lot more seriously if you do. And also, obviously, just visually, I mean, let's be really honest, whether or not anyone's actually got a 4K TV doesn't matter. Down-resing is always better than trying to up-res. And also, it saved our bacon in the post world unbelievably, because there was trash footage and repurposed footage that we were able to do things with, which of course you could never have done if you were at the same resolution as output.
Right, exactly. And we've had on this podcast and on the website, I've had multiple conversations about 4K and the ability to it. And I always say, if you can afford 4K and can afford the 4K workflow at a high resolution, I'm not talking about a 4K compressed MP4. I'm talking about real 4K. Then do it. Absolutely. But you don't have to. And it's not a deal breaker. You can. No,
definitely not.
And if it's an original Netflix, they have to be 4K. But if Netflix is buying for it, they'll take 1080p. And they're comfortable. And because most people don't have a 4K monitor.
That's right.
So it's not absolutely necessary. But I'm sure that working at 5K workflow was not easy. Now, did you cut it in DaVinci? What software did you use?
We actually did. We initially started, if you can believe it, we started the initial piecing it together in Final Cut Pro 7.
God help you.
And yes, exactly. And obviously where we really instantly knew we were going to have a problem, because again, as I told you, when we started this, we didn't know where this was going to end up. And
sure.
The project up-resed really quickly. If you will. And so ultimately we ran into, before we got too far in, we were just piecing edits together, and we were kind of going, this is a dead end workflow, because we don't really want to go into Final Cut X. Certainly don't have access to an Avid. And obviously, there's Vegas and there's these different platforms and Premiere and whatnot. Okay. And as it turned out, I had already done a tutorial with the DaVinci Resolve for color, obviously prior to it becoming an NLE. So I felt pretty comfortable in the interface. So when they came out with their first version of the NLE, that was, workable for us, I was like, you know what, I know we can work in color the way I want to work in here. I know we can deal with the resolution that we want to work at, and output, most importantly. And we really did. We took the plunge. We actually moved it all across, and we said, "Okay, we're burning the ships. And we're going this way." And it's a decision that thankfully I made, because Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve now, especially that they've included Fairlight and everything with the new 14. It's really turned into something that I think is very progressive especially for independent filmmakers who really need to do a lot of this on their own.
And it's free. It's free, pretty much.
Absolutely. Even the full dongled version now, they dropped the price.
$300.
NAB, another $300. It's nothing. By comparison, it's absolutely nothing. And I will say, not to sound like a poster child, but the philosophy, because I've even asked some of my colleagues and friends who work at or with Blackmagic and said, why are they giving this away? And the owner and the general culture of the company is, hey, if we give this away, people are going to pay that little bump to get the dongle, and then on top of it, it integrates with all of our cameras. It integrates with all of the rest of our stuff. The warm and fuzzy feeling of the fact that it's all staying within the family and it's working for them, and we're being attentive to what they're asking us to make the product do, is going to be how we make our profit. And we don't need to make it on this. And if anything, it's the It's the carrot they want to dangle. And I think, the other
It's a
thing
heck
is
of a carrot.
it is. And also one of the things that they really felt strongly about, which is funny in all things in my mind, coming from a company that initially obviously was, their original color correction machines and, studio installs are like, hallowed ground, hermetically sealed rooms with perfect lighting and $40,000 calibration, calibrated monitors and this kind of stuff. And they suddenly said, hey, well, you know what? We actually think everybody deserves to have the software technology. You might not be able to afford the room, and you might have to come up with your own way to make sure you've got a grading monitor that's going to work for you. Mm-hmm. But we think everybody deserves access to this because everybody deserves the ability to make their art.
Amen.
And I love that about Blackmagic.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that as well. Yeah. And very similar to your story, I did the exact same thing when I did my first feature, which was I was on Final Cut 7. I'm like, I don't want to go to X. I don't want to go to Premiere. And I bet I've been a colorist for 10, 12 years. And I was like, well, there's that edit tab. Let me give it a shot. And I literally just burned the ships, as you said. And I was like, okay, we're color grading raw and we're editing raw in Resolve, and it was a wonderful experience. Really wonderful experience.
I have to agree, and as I said, it's only gotten better with each next version. And as I said, some of the stuff that I was able to do now, the thing with Please Tell Me I'm Adopted that has brought a certain amount of trade and industry interest to what Nikki and I did. Mm-hmm. Was the fact that obviously, as I said, both Nikki and myself, we physically did all the post. We did all the motion graphics, we did all the titles, we did all the animation, all of the color, obviously all the edit, the sound design, mm-hmm. the Foley, the dialogue mixing, the ADR, everything except the actual original composing. We temped stuff in our wonderful composer named Heath Allen in Austin, mm-hmm. did that. And then obviously all final outputs, all artwork, everything. We did physically all of it. And I did it on a MacBook Pro, maxed out with portable, higher speed hard drives, and all over the world while on tour with the Elton John band.
So you're posting a full series while you're on the road with Elton John.
Yep,
that's pretty insane.
It was completely nuts. I hope to maybe never quite do it like that ever again. Mm-hmm. In fact, it would probably kill me. Mm-hmm. The way I sort of did my math, and I would never want to actually try to add up man hours because then I would have to jump off a bridge.
Yeah, of course.
But it was one of those things where on a day off on the road, I would probably put in 12 to 14 hours on the show. And then obviously being as I was all the departments today, it might be sound. And then I might be bouncing into color on another episode, or I might be, doing this or that. And,
I think, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think that what you are doing, and in part also what I do, is being that kind of one-man band kind of model is, I think, truly the future of filmmakers, indie filmmaking, because you've got to do more than one job. You got to do more than 5 jobs.
Yeah, you may choose perhaps that you want to get it close and then have somebody tweak because you can afford that, or you may choose, hey, I know how to really make color look good, so I'm going to spend my budget because I'm not so good at sound on sound. But I totally agree. I think having the ability, and even just moving forward in the more traditional vein, I think as a producer, the mere fact that you put your hands on the software, that you've actually done every one of these jobs, means that when someone from a department comes to you and says, I need this, or this is what that's going to take, you're so much better informed to know whether or not this person has any idea what they're talking about, or if what they're asking for is not reasonable. Maybe they're padding the bill a little bit. Maybe they really don't know how to accomplish the task. Mm-hmm. So I think every filmmaker should go through one trial by fire of having to do every single thing.
Absolutely.
Just to know the workflow. And I know going on a set and sitting in a production trailer, you learn how to make movies and fill out forms and stuff, but it's not the same.
No, it's not. And only when you kind of start building up, I always call it the toolbox that you build up over the course of your career. You keep throwing new tools in the toolbox. Yes. And now you can literally grab a camera, go out and shoot content and finish it yourself without having to count on anybody else if you can help it. I mean,
That's right.
That model works on an indie level, and Robert Rodriguez actually showed it. They could actually work on a larger scale as well.
That's right.
But at a certain point, you have to bring in, VFX teams and things like that, or else you just physically can't do it all. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
That's right.
But if you're doing it on a low budget or an indie budget of $100,000 or lower, you can do this. I mean, it's absolutely doable. So I'm so glad. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, because I wanted to show the listeners that this is kind of the new way of doing things. And I don't know how much experience you have working with other filmmakers, but one thing I've seen again and again is a lot of filmmakers want to be successful, be famous, be rich, make their movies, but they don't want to put that work in. And they're I just want to write, or I just want to be the director.
I'm like, you can't do that anymore.
I'm like, you're not going to come on the set with a monocle and a blowhorn, and a beret and say you're the director. Those days are gone.
No, and in fact, it's even true. My wife realized as an actress, and this is an interesting thing you bring up because it's really true. As I told you, my wife's first love is as an actor. That's where her passion really ignites on set. But she realized, and again, this was Gary Marshall, who has been was nothing but an amazing champion of our company, of my wife as a force in Hollywood. And one of the things that he pointed out, and we've seen, is the fact that even in the major studio system, they would so rather hire an actor who has written, maybe directed, maybe produce their own things, has a company, because they want to know that they don't have a diva in a trailer who won't come out because the green M&Ms didn't show up. They want somebody who knows that there is time is money, that this is how a movie set works, that you are one part of it, and how you fit in, and why you have to hit your mark, and why you have to nail your lines, and when you have an adjust, that if you don't get it right the first time, we are burning daylight, and there's 3 more setups to go.
That's a really good point. Well, first of all, if I don't have my green M&Ms, obviously I can't work. But
absolutely,
obviously, but seriously though, you're absolutely right. That's a really good point. I've never even thought about that, because that actually is a really good perspective. Because when you're dealing with actors that are just actors, and it's so sad to say, but that's a great point. Like, they want a hustler.
Yeah,
they want.
They want to know that you're on their team and that you get what's happening on the set and not just your little tiny microcosmic part. And I think that's, as you're saying, even true. The knowledge base in the toolbox, whether or not you end up doing it or whether or not it informs who you're going to hire to do it, suddenly it streamlines your workflow and makes sure that you're not hiring idiots. And obviously you're doing what you need to do and what you can do, and you're farming out what needs to get done faster or by a team, or you can't, but you're also then much more intelligent with what you're going to do with the limited resources you have as an independent.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, and I'll say it one more time. I mean, as a filmmaker, you really need to know as many jobs as you can to be able to be able to produce this. Like you said, you wouldn't have been able to produce your show unless you guys did it all yourself, and you learned on the job, which is kind of nutty. But you know what? I DP'd my first feature. I never DP'd a feature before. So I was like, I learned on the job, and I learned something.
I got pulled in. I was executive producing in my office upstairs, and we ran into some delays on the first day of shooting that cost us time. And I went to my department heads and I said, guys, we can't finish the shoot if you guys are going to work this slow. You got to redesign your shot list, and you got to get this. We have to cover this many pages in a day. I can't help you.
Right.
All right. I don't have the funds to go over. So there you go. And they came back to me. They said, we've worked the shot list, but we have one stipulation. I'm like, okay. And they said, we need you to step in as our first AD. And I was like, okay. And I'm not kidding, Alex. This is not one of my prouder moments, although I fooled everybody, which was great. I literally went that night. I said, sure. All right. And, I've managed stages. I've done different things. Sure. So I wasn't worried about doing the job at all. I understood that being a first AD is about keeping all the departments talking, the logistics of actually keeping the set moving. You save 2 minutes here, 4 minutes there, 7 minutes there. You make sure you don't go over on your time, and you basically keep things moving. And when you add that up at the end of a week, you've saved 6 hours. But at the same time, though I've been on umpteen sets, though I've paid attention and absorbed like a sponge, I went onto Wikipedia and looked up first AD, at which point I jotted down, and I'm very good. If I write something down, I don't actually have to refer to my notes. I remember it. I literally wrote I needed to use the next morning. Okay, back to one, everybody. First positions, last looks, and fooled everybody. And actually, at the end of the shoot, after all the days we did, I went to one of the more professional members of our team, and I asked him, I said, this really was my first opportunity to step in as first AD. How'd I do? And he said, wow, I had no idea you hadn't done this for many times. That was a huge compliment that I had managed to sort of not only do the job right, but fit into the mold of what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to say. Let's just get on with work.
Hey, I'll tell you what, like going on Wikipedia to look up the job you're about to do the next day. A lot of times, and this is not always going to end well, but a lot of times you got to fake it till you make it.
That's right.
But you're also a seasoned pro in many other avenues of not only this business, but the music industry and stuff. So you have a little bit of depth to fall back on, as opposed to a 20-year-old trying to do this. I do think one of the things, you asked what I've been recently strangely put in this role because of what we've done. And I was lucky enough. I got named to the Studio Daily 50 at NAB, which I initially thought was a scam, one of those things where, hey, for $50, we'll put you in our registry of winners. And get an award. Right.
Exactly. And we'll give you an award. But you
have to pay for the award. Right.
Yeah. So I thought it was a scam. And then I contacted some of the other companies that were up for technical awards from Studio Daily. And they were like, no, it's real. And I'm like, well, did you nominate me? They were like, no, but it's great. How'd you get that? And I found out later it was because someone had heard about what we had done and the almost impossibility of it. And I actually can now say I won an award for doing this stuff, which makes me giggle. But at the same time, I've had a lot of people now coming to me going, what should we do? How did you do this? How did you learn these programs? What was the knowledge base? And I think maybe the disconnect is that the kids in the film school think it's too hard to learn it. And instead, even as you said, you got to fake it and, learn while you earn, potentially is the reality, for me is it's like whether it be Ripple Training or lynda.com, you whip through that stuff as fast as you can. You retain about 60 to 70% of it. Then you go do your own work and you remember somewhere along the way, hey, wait a minute. I'm missing a quick key here that I remember the guy talked about. Let me run back. Let me find that 10-minute QuickTime movie, and I might actually watch it at normal speed. That was one of my tricks. I literally would take the Ripple or lynda.com, elements, and I would actually download them and then play them with VLC at about 2.5 times the speed. So it sounded like an auctioneer. Hey, you're going to do this color, and we're going to do it. And then I'd retain 90% of it, and then go on and work on my project. And when I'd hit a roadblock or a wall, I'd be like, hang on, they talked about this. And I'd go find it. And obviously, once you do it yourself, you've internalized it for life, and you move on. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty insane. And I think that's maybe what more indie filmmakers have to realize, that yes, there is a learning curve, but no one says you can't be working while you're doing that. And, there's good people out there, as I said, professionals who use this, the stuff, even people, even buffoons like myself. If someone asks me a question, I had a cinematographer friend who was having trouble with some of the caching features in Resolve, which saved my project worldwide. And they said, well, I know you said you did this. Can you walk me through it? I got on the phone and walked her through it. And she was like, oh my God, I'm editing in native, like I'm editing in 5K without proxies. And when I go to my output room, it's full maximized debayer, and it's working. I'm able to actually see in real time what I'm doing. And I was like, yep, there you go. But there's always someone who's willing to give you that knowledge base and help you. You just can't be afraid of asking, and you certainly can't be afraid of diving into a new program and forcing yourself, as you say, to put in a little bit of the time to do the work.
I think that's the one thing that a lot of filmmakers are missing, is that they have to understand that this is work, and this is not, and I've said this a million times, I'm sure everyone listening will go, okay, Alex, we've heard it before, but it's the truth. This is not a short game. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. This is a very long game. It's not a 1-year plan. It's a 10-year plan.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And you have to kind of go through everything. You have to go through all the rough stuff to come out. But that's what it takes in this world. And this world is changing every day a little bit more. And it's not going towards the past. It's going towards the future. So you'll need to know more and more and more, and to be your own DP, be your own editor, be your own colorist, be your own producer, your own writer, and so on. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the distribution of the show. Yes. What was the distribution plan? Was it for money or was it for exposure? And why did you choose Amazon Prime?
It was a very interesting story. Initially, ideally, as I told you, the impetus for the whole project was sort of to exercise the demons and just put something up on YouTube. Then it turned into, wait a minute, this is a series. This is a great concept for a series, which then turned into, wow, this is starting to look really, really good. You can't just put this up. It needs to be seen. I think initially it wasn't even so much about like, hey, let's go make a out in a way that people can actually see it, enjoy it, and hopefully create, a demand for the product that can lead to being able to do more, and do a second season, do a third season, have guest stars that we want to have come on the show and things of that nature. And so initially, as I said, it was all about production and getting it done, which was a mammoth task in itself, as obviously you know. Mm-hmm. But then it came down to, great, where's our home? We do not want to just put this up on YouTube so they own it. And we don't have anything except maybe, commercial revenue that they get to pick. And then we started looking at the streaming services, obviously. Our first port of call that we looked at was Hulu. At the time, Hulu was doing quite well. And we sort of Netflix wasn't doing anything. Our project is something that Jeffrey Katzenberg was touting and some of the media. We actually have a short form original comedy series. So meaning each episode comes in at anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes, depending on the episode. And in some ways it's akin to obviously a regular series premise, a through line throughout the season and the series. But each episode is micro compacted, covering a particular topic that we're spoofing. Mm-hmm. And with the short attention span of kids today, we really wanted to sort of find a niche to not be the 30-minute episode or the hour-long episode. We wanted to be that one that if they've got time to watch the Crazy Cat video on YouTube, they got enough time to watch an episode of Please Tell Me I'm Adopted. Mm-hmm. And in fact, share it similarly. And we've had so far very good success with that. So we were looking at this, and Netflix doesn't really, at the time, they didn't really have anything really in that vein. Mm-hmm. And then we looked at Hulu, and Hulu was doing some short form stuff. And when we contacted and started to submit, and look at Hulu, the problem was Hulu suddenly out of nowhere stopped accepting submission and content because they were going to retool their financial model to match Netflix. Instead of a revenue-based, they decided, revenue sharing base, they were going to go to straight licensing as Netflix has. Yep. Well, they literally stopped accepting content for over 3 months. Mm-hmm.
I'm aware.
Now, how there can be anything on their service at that point, I have no idea. I don't know where the content was coming from, but they refused to even look at anything, let alone make any deals. And so we sort of sat around and we were like, ugh. At which point we really started looking seriously at how hard Amazon was working to, besides conquer the world, but literally how hard they were working to actually start putting really quality programs and make them available And Amazon's business model, and this is just this whole sidebar for me, obviously in the US, we see it as, hey, I really want stuff shipped to my house, so I'm going to do that. And, oh, wow, I get some free stuff with it as well, video, audio. Hey, that's cool, man. Well, the rest of the world, the way Amazon is approaching it is they're selling video and audio and book product. And then they're saying, hey, for just a small little add-on, you can order your stuff from us too. So they're actually starting to get their business model going outside the U.S. and in new territories by using the video elements, the audio elements and media as a way to get people to start subscribing, which then makes them, of course, completely captive to any Amazon advertising for their shipping services. And
you're in their ecosystem.
Absolutely. And you're already loving it because you have this great content. You're seeing these great shows like Please Tell Me I'm Adopted. And you're like, wow, for only $2 more, I can order my, duct tape and come to my house.
Right.
Sure. €2 more, I can do that. So I think it's a brilliant idea, as far as how to create that demand for the product. And so for us, we actually have been riding the wave. We decided, the heck with Hulu. If you can't get your stuff together, we've got a great show. We want to get it out. We want to start moving. We did use an aggregator, which I'm very pleased with, a company called Kino Nation. We had, obviously, I'm sure you're familiar, we had 2 different options, major online options for aggregators. And since this was our first project, I really wanted to have that knowledge base of an aggregator. I wasn't so concerned whether it be the flat fee base or whether it be a percentage base of royalties. I wasn't so concerned with that. I wanted to have that extra bit of help in making sure fulfillment was done properly, making sure that all of the metadata was what it needed to be. And I'm actually forever grateful that the people at Kino Nation worked with us to make this happen, because they obviously have the responsibility of putting everything into the correct format for whatever streaming services and platforms that you pick. And it's interesting to note, I felt very comfortable with Kino, especially because instead of flat fee, they do take a percentage of your profits, but they don't make dime one unless you make money, which made me feel much more warm and fuzzy about, hey, okay, you're going to take my product around and talk to people I can't get access to. I would like you to have a vested interest in why it would be a good idea to represent my product properly. And the fact that you don't make money until I make money, that instantaneously was obviously very attractive of like, okay, that makes sense to me. Why would I pay you $600 and then you say you're going to take something around town?
Right.
Okay. I don't exactly see what your incentive is to work very hard, and I didn't like that, and Nikki didn't like it as well. And as I said, we did intentionally, and again, this is a media ploy. We could have put our show on a variety of different platforms simultaneously. We chose to make ourselves an Amazon exclusive, and that actually seems to carry some weight. People actually see that and go and subscribe. They buy the show even piecemeal on Amazon. And there's a certain amount of kind of cachet that comes with that. And I've had to, on different interviews, I've had to explain to people that obviously the other thing is within whether it be Netflix or anyone else's world, and Netflix is a little bit different because obviously they do, if they're going to license you, they're going to pay up front a certain amount, but it's not much. They're licensing a 2-year period, and at which point they have whatever they want to do with it. So they have some incentive to advertise the show. They have some incentive to try to help get the word out, but not much. And
well, let me ask you a question about Amazon Prime. So you went through an aggregator to go into Amazon Prime, but you could have easily just done Amazon Prime by yourself.
That is correct. On this particular one, I chose to use the connection that we had with our aggregator just to facilitate how everything goes up, to make sure everything was lined up. And then potentially, obviously, as we move forward, we may open up the first season to other platforms as well. And obviously, it's all already in the pipeline. It's already, I can just press a button and off it goes.
Now, did you release it on Amazon for sale first, or was it always Prime?
It actually was Prime and sale simultaneous. We basically did our premiere on March 6th, and we basically just did the across the board. Obviously, if you're not a Prime user, you can just pay for it. If you're a Prime user, we get a flat per minute, viewing or per second viewing.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And we just, for us, as you said, a good portion of this is, and again, as you said, the 10-year plan. Mm-hmm. It's not a 1-year plan. We put this together. We wanted to, use this as partially as even proof of concept. We've got a great show. People are watching it. People are reviewing it well. And with X amount of dollars for PR versus X amount of dollars for production, here's what is possible with an increase in, funding and investment in both areas. We can have exponential growth, and see a much larger profitability. Now, let me ask you, on the Amazon Prime, when you're being paid per minute, how are you doing with that? Because I haven't gone down that path yet with my film. It's available on Amazon, but I haven't released it on Prime yet. It's only for sale at the moment. So,
at the moment, we actually are doing very well with that. Obviously, one of the things that is interesting with the Amazon platform that I think is maybe a little bit different with, say, Netflix, because Netflix, of course, it's
a buyout, right?
It's a buyout, and it's obviously you either have Netflix or you don't. And because of the cost of it, I don't know necessarily that many people. Yeah, obviously the nice thing with being on either, with sort of the business model of Amazon is if someone wants to see your show, they can just go buy it. If they have Prime, however, and one of your sort of goals is to go viral, to actually have a larger audience start talking about your product and start moving it around, they don't have to pay anything. They just become a fan. They become part of your army. So for whatever you lose in dollar value, I think you gain in mass marketing that you didn't technically have to PR and pay for. And that's sort of what we've noticed. I mean, we had a wonderful occurrence. And as I said, we've been pounding the pavement like crazy on our own, doing things like speaking to you, which is fantastic for the show. I got a phone call out of nowhere. I was out on the road. I think it was in El Paso, Texas. And a nice lady from Time Inc. called me up and said, "Are you the person involved with that Please Tell Me I'm Adopted show?" And I said, "Why, yes, I am." And she said, "Oh, well, could you send, we think we're going to do a little something on your show in the UK. Could you send us some information?" I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I can." And I whipped out our EPK faster than you can. I think I was still on my iPhone. I was like still on the phone with her. "Okay, you should have that now," with photos and, our bios and all the information about the show and the release and everything. And she was like, "Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, wow, that's fantastic." She even emailed me back, said, "That's one of the best little packages I've ever seen. Everything we need is in there. Thank you." Then I never heard anything back. And I was like, okay. And she told me she was with something called the TV Times in the UK, which, of course, in retrospect, having done the research, is the equivalent of like their TV Guide.
Got it.
So what out of nowhere, I'm watching our numbers, and you're getting your UK numbers and your German and your Japanese. And suddenly I see this huge bump in our UK numbers. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I know we've done ads, we've done interviews, we've done this, that, and the other thing, trying to find, what did that come from? Well, of course, it came from the fact, and I finally got a copy of it, in the TV Times, they say, what else is on? And other than the regular standard BBC listings and things, the ITV and all that, they say, hey, here's some other great content you don't want to miss. And they literally had 3 little sections, and the top one was Better Call Saul. The middle one was us, and the bottom was Adam Sandler's Sandy Wexler movie.
Not a bad group to be in.
I will certainly be wedged between Better Call Saul and Adam Sandler's movie any day. And of course, people went. So, and again, part of that is if they've got Amazon Prime and they've never heard of you, there's no sweat off their back to check it out. And obviously, as you move forward, whether it be being able to show that you've got a viable project, to be able to show that you have a successful project, obviously, as you well know. And then even on top of it, and this is something I think filmmakers don't understand you'll get this because you've done it, but the idea that you've done your own feature film and you did it yourself, well, why should I talk to Alex about this project I'm going to be doing? Why should I interview him to be the DP? Well, he's got these 6 projects he did. Oh, I know that one. I like that one. Yeah, I'll meet with him. Otherwise, well, what's their incentive to take a chance on you or me? But when they're like, yeah, they've got a successful show on Amazon. They're doing great. They're working on the 2nd season. Yeah, I'll take that. Suddenly it does legitimize and open doors.
Without question. I mean, once you start creating content and creating product that's good, even respectable, not even like you have to, award-winning monster thing, people start taking you seriously because now you've just jumped from the 99% up into the 1% that actually does something.
That's correct. And in fact, that just starts cracking open more doors. And also it opens the possibility and brings you into a group of people that are, again, as I said earlier, want to help you succeed. They want to help you with the knowledge base. If they don't know, they'll help you find somebody who does to answer your question or help you. And that's been, as I said, that's been the most awesome thing. You really are suddenly in the club. For a filmmaker coming out of film school or something like that, or somebody who's never completed a project and put it up on a actual site other than, and I do think there's nothing wrong with YouTube. There's nothing wrong with any of that. There's nothing wrong with just, printing your own book, but at the same time, it doesn't carry the weight.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, YouTube, where you can go see the cat video doesn't have the same cachet that if you have your feature on it, like, oh, your feature's on YouTube, you must have failed. And I hate to say that, but
that's true.
There's like, oh, you're another YouTube series. There's 1,000 of them. But being on Amazon, and not that Amazon's doing the same thing, it's opening itself up to a lot of different, videos and things as well. But Amazon still has that cachet, while Netflix and Hulu, those have much larger cachets, purely because they're harder to get into. So it's fascinating. I mean, your story's been very fascinating, Chris, and I wanted to thank you so much for sharing it. And I've got a few questions I ask all of my guests.
Absolutely.
So first question is, what advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to make their first feature or their first series?
Realistically, I always say this, technology or no technology, absolutely realize that you're a storyteller. Don't lose sight of the fact that you're trying to tell a story. Figure out what that story is, and then use the technology as best you can to tell your story. Because at the end of the day, pretty color is really great, and CGI stuff is really nifty. But if you're not telling me a story, it doesn't work on a studio level, and it doesn't work on an independent level. Make sure your story is great, and be passionate about telling it. Then use the tools to do it.
Now, can you tell me what book had the biggest impact on your life or career?
Interestingly, it's a series of kids' books, and it has nothing to do with filmmaking. There was a author named Arthur Ransom, and he wrote these English books about these kids. One was made into a movie called Swallows and Amazons, and it's about these kids who go away for the summer into the Lake District, and they get on little sailboats, and they basically just imagine and dream, and they have their own little battles, and they create their own world. And in some ways, as quite a few of my good producer friends have told me, at the end of the day, your job as a filmmaker, your job as a storyteller is to create the world, make me believe every bit of it, and immerse me in it. And that's what I felt from those books. And that's what I learned from those books, was to dream and imagine and come out the other side with this whole world that you've constructed. And that's what being a storyteller and a filmmaker ends up being. So when Nikki comes up with a script for our company, or we option something, then it's about let's all create this world and invite people to come into it.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Probably to admit when you're wrong. Probably to admit when you're wrong, and in fact, try to do something about it. Try to actually use that as a life lesson of like, okay, yeah, I overstepped my bounds on this, or I did something about that. Try to change your behavior for the better, and it's going to make everything smoother. You're not going to run into the same roadblocks again, and people will appreciate when you actually make that effort.
Very cool. Now, what are 3 of your favorite films of all time? We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Oh, well, you mentioned one. It's a strange, obviously, everybody says they love it. The Shining. Mm-hmm. I love it just purely because of a lot of the cinematography and the imagery is, for whatever reason, just sticks in my brain. It is unbelievable the way that imagery stays with you. Mm-hmm. One of the most seminal movies, and I'm very excited for the newest one, the not exactly reboot, but the sequel, I guess it would be, is Blade Runner.
Ah, yes, Blade Runner.
And that movie, more than any other movie, for a variety of reasons, both when I was very young and now that I'm a little bit older, has really been a very, very powerful impact emotionally to me. And then I think, oddly, I would say my last choice would probably be going back to more of a genre of films that were so stunning that they sort of let me know what was possible. And that was, if you go back to all of the silent films, silent comedies, the physical comedies. So Chaplin and Buster Keaton, and all of those guys that did these incredibly elaborate physical stunts, and of course had to do it all in one take and make it all absolutely seamless and try not to get killed in the process.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was something really special.
Now, where can people find you and find your work?
The easiest thing to do is, obviously, we're all over IMDb. We'll be on your podcast here, obviously, which is spectacular. But Please Tell Me I'm Adopted, which is our original short form comedy series, is on Amazon Prime, Amazon anywhere in the world.
Cool. And how about your company or web?
Our company is Raptastic Productions, like you wrapped the shoot, and it was fantastic. So Raptastic Productions. And if someone does want to get in touch with us, obviously they can go to IMDb and find out all the details there. And especially with all the press for Please Tell Me I'm Adopted, we're kind of like a rash on the web, which is great.
That's a great term. I like that. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I really appreciate your time.
No, absolutely. And I think what you're doing with the podcast and the fact that you're taking time out of your own production to help educate, independent filmmakers as to what's possible. I think it's brilliant that you're there.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So you guys getting ready to go make your own streaming series? I know we're trying to, Jill and I are actually pitching This Is Meg as a streaming series as well to a few studios, and we're going to see if we get any bites. But it's just a new world, man. You guys can go out there, not just make a feature film, but make a series. You can make an 8-episode series. They can be 10, 15 minutes each. There's no reason why you guys don't have it. And if you're an actor listening to this show right now, there is absolutely no reason why you and a bunch of your acting friends don't get a couple cameras, get a few filmmakers together, and guys, just write something and go make a series. Put yourselves out there. Stop waiting for people to give you permission to do what you love. Not only actors, but of course, all the filmmakers listening. Don't wait for permission. Just go out and do it. There is no excuses anymore. So I hope you got a lot out of that interview with Chris Sobchak, and definitely check out his series, Please Tell Me I'm Adopted. It will be in the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/187. And if you guys haven't checked it out yet, definitely head over to our YouTube channel at indiefilmhustle.com/YouTube and check out our new show, the Director Series, where we go deep down the rabbit hole on some of your favorite filmmakers of all time, current and classic. Currently, we have David Fincher, and Chris Nolan is up next. So definitely check it out. And as always, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.